Thank you all for listening in today. Today I am joined by Dr. Teresa DeSeta, Assistant Director of Student Placements for Partnership Development and Community Health at the University of Maryland, Baltimore School of Nursing. In her role as Assistant Director, Teresa has successfully established impactful collaborations, including a clinical partnership with the Enoch Pratt Free Library, providing nursing students with valuable clinical experience in community settings. Teresa is a dedicated nursing leader with extensive experience in leadership, education, and community health. She holds advanced certifications in nursing professional development and nursing executive advanced from the ANCC, and is a proud member of Sigma Theta Tau and Kappa Gamma Pi. With a passion for advancing the nursing profession through political advocacy and policy development, Teresa's DNP project, or Doctor of Nursing Practice project, addressed the underutilization of Maryland's income tax credit for nurse preceptors, which is why we are here today. And by gaining the commitment of support from 8 Maryland professional organizations and collaborating closely with legislative leaders, she played a pivotal role in the introduction of legislation by the Maryland General Assembly. So welcome, Teresa. Thank you so much for coming on the MNRC Connection. We're delighted to have you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Yeah, we love it. I am so very interested in getting into this topic today of the what I affectionately call the preceptor tax credit, which I know it has a much more formal official name. But you have been making the rounds over the last several months, even year or so, gaining support and spreading awareness for this work that you're doing and that you did for your DNP projects. So I know I heard about it through several state meetings, but why don't you, if you could, tell our listeners today a little bit more about this, quote, preceptor tax credit?
Sure. Let's talk about the history a little bit first so we can all get the background on this. So in 2016, Maryland enacted a healthcare preceptor income tax credit, and that was to help support recruitment and retention of healthcare professionals.
Okay.
The program at that time included physicians, physician assistants, and nurse practitioners, and it had a particular focus with a rural or underserved area. So for nursing, eligible nurse practitioners could access the benefit by precepting nurse practitioner students.
Okay.
And then in 2022, this benefit was expanded to include registered nurses.
Okay.
And the qualifications, because I'm sure everybody's dying to know, how do I qualify for this?
Yep. Yes.
So in order for a preceptor to qualify for the benefit, there are a few conditions that have to be met. Now, these specifics are on the Maryland Department of Health's website. So I'm just giving a general overview. I do not speak for the Maryland Department of Health.
No, this is great. This is great. I think this is what people want to know.
For sure. So first off, the preceptor must precept a nursing student who is enrolled in a nursing education program that's recognized by the Maryland Board of Nursing. So this could be an in-state school, which they all are, or it can be an out-of-state school.
Okay.
The preceptor must also complete 3 distinct rotations of at least 100 hours each within a calendar year.
Okay.
And then the preceptor's practice site needs to be identified as rural or underserved. And that criteria, again, lives on the Maryland Department of Health website.
Okay.
And then the last part is the preceptor cannot receive any compensation for precepting. So they can still get paid their normal salary, but no shift differential. No like, oh, here's $1 more an hour because you took a nursing student.
Okay.
And then if a preceptor met that criteria, they could be eligible to receive an income tax credit based on their Maryland state taxes. The amount that it is awarded equates to $1,000 per rotation, but they still have to have that minimum 3, so you're at least getting $3,000.
Okay.
Preceptors could precept for up to 10 rotations. However, there's a limit because you can't go above your tax withholding. So just to use even numbers, we'll just pretend, $8,000 was held out of their state income tax for that particular tax year. They did 10 rotations. They're not getting $10,000. They would get their 8 or be eligible for the 8.
I got you. Okay.
And I'm also saying that the funding is limited. So that means that not every eligible applicant could be guaranteed to get the benefit once funding is depleted. And then so part of my DNP project I was investigating the tax credit, and I had identified several issues. And so while we have funding that's allocated for that nurse practitioner fund that was first established in 2016, and then the RN fund that was established in 2022, only one RN was qualified to receive that benefit since 2022.
Okay.
So,
wow.
Yeah, I found that to be absolutely appalling.
Yes.
We had this really great benefit for nurses, and it was severely underutilized, practically non-existent in utilization. When I looked at that root cause analysis of the problem, I saw that 100-hour requirement didn't align to our state COMAR regulations.
Okay. Yeah.
And so for those unfamiliar,
I was going to ask you, like, why? Like, why do you think that is? A lot. I mean, I know there's been a little bit of a lack of awareness, but yeah, that credit that's important. The hours matching up.
Yes. And so for those who aren't familiar, one credit equals 45 clinical hours. And so from this perspective, 90 makes a lot more sense. The other issue is that the tax credit was about to sunset, meaning it was going to be discontinued altogether. And so the only way to really change that, not only the hour requirement, but that sunset, was to do so through legislation.
Right. Okay. That's, wow. That, I think there's a lot in that. It's so good to know that there's some incentive to be a preceptor. But it's sort of sad that people didn't know about this opportunity. And, and I love that it's a credit too, that it's like money back instead of just a deduction or whatever. And so, that's great. Thank you for explaining that so thoroughly. So you clearly had a passion for this. How did you get involved in this legislative process? Because that's a lot. It can be intimidating, all those things. How did you get involved?
Well, I started out by approaching my delegate. She's phenomenal, Delegate Robin Lewis. Okay. And I gave her an elevator pitch about the problem, similar to what I just said, just much shorter version. When I told her that only one nurse received the benefit, she was like, we have to change this. I want to work with you. We have to change this. And that really started to set everything in motion. Yeah. There was a lot of behind the scenes work that happened. If you follow things on the Maryland General Assembly, website, you're just seeing little snippets of, what's happening. But, the 18 months leading up to it, I had collected data from nursing school programming across the state. I was looking at what each semester looked like and how many students would need a one-to-one preceptor, what were the hourly requirements. I met with multiple stakeholders, organizations, lobbyists to really rally support for a bill that Delegate Lewis was preparing to introduce for nurses. And, from the very beginning, Delegate Lewis had advised me, to speak to everybody, understand, who opposed the bill, who supported the bill. Okay. I looked into the history for 2026 and 2022 legislation to see support and opposition, had countless conversations to the point where a few months before session 25 began, people were reaching out to me because somebody I had spoken with referred them to speak with me. Yeah. And that whole process was really instrumental in building a coalition. And so really by the time the bill was ready, I had multiple organizations backing the change for that hourly requirement. Okay. And thankfully, and most importantly, I had a delegate who was committed to submitting a bill that would help nurses access this incredible benefit. Yeah. It's amazing when you advocate for something, how you become the expert in that thing. and I love how Maryland nurses rally, because they do. And that's one of the things I'm so proud of, being a part of, Maryland nursing is how we get behind something when we are passionate about it. So I love that you've spearheaded this. So was, there was a little surprise, wasn't there, in this process? What was just that? What happened? Yeah, yeah. Just a little. So at the request of Governor Moore through the Maryland Department of Health, a bill was pre-filed. This bill was HB 19, and so that was the Health Occupations Nursing Loan Repayment Education and Sunset Extension. Very long name. Yeah. Okay. And I'm sincerely grateful for Governor Moore's support for the nursing profession. This bill represented an expansion of Maryland's nursing loan repayment program, introduced education incentives, and it included sunset extensions, including an extension for the sunset on the healthcare preceptor tax credit. I was very surprised by the development. I was not expecting that to happen at all.
Yeah.
The other piece is it was only the sunset extension, so it did not include any change to those hours. So I had to quickly pivot. I had
Okay.
to mobilize that coalition to rally support behind HB 19 and prepare very quickly to testify during the committee hearing process for the first time. So.
Yeah. So explain that maybe a little more. There was this bill that you had anticipated being there, and you were going to go in and just kind of argue for this certain piece, the hour piece, and then all of a sudden there's this whole different bill that you're having to now rally and figure out how to talk to or testify to, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
that's crazy. And so how did you do that? Like, talk more about HB 19 and that process. Like, okay, you've pivoted, you had to rally, and then what?
So, like I said, it was very quick because we had about, I don't think it was even 2 weeks where we had to essentially sign up to do this. Yeah, so getting everybody on board real quick. So testimony, I'll dive into testimony for a quick second.
Yeah. Tell us.
Testimony offers multiple ways in which somebody can say that they are in favor of a bill, if they're opposing a bill, or they're in favor of it, but they want to change a certain aspect. And so they can do that by providing a written submission. They could do that in person, or they can sign up to do both.
Right.
So I had opted to do both. My position was favorable with amendment, which meant, of course, that I supported the bill, but I wanted to get that 90-hour requirement in there.
Right.
So for my testimony, for the written piece, I had that opportunity where I could cite references. I included the data that I collected from nursing schools in a pretty bar chart. I could say kind of what I wanted, really, express the importance of it.
Right.
For the in-person testimony, it's a little bit more strict. You have a 2-minute time limit, and yes, they do use a timer.
Yes, I've seen it. It is intense.
Yes, I felt that way a little bit. It required me to be very concise and to make very impactful statements in a very short time frame.
Yeah.
Prior to my testimony, what really helped me, a lobbyist shared a piece of advice, and I'm so grateful for that. And he said, be sure you include the names of all the organizations supporting the amendment. I don't know if I would have thought to do that ahead of time, but I did do that in both my written and my verbal testimony. So I am incredibly grateful for that expertise. And I had another lobbyist who shared, she said, sometimes the 2 minutes become 1. So be prepared with your 2 minutes, but be prepared for your 1. It just depended on how many people signed up. So I was like, okay. So I had kind of a 2-parter piece ready to go.
An alternative. So they can shorten your testimony if time runs out or whatever. They have too many people testifying.
Yeah, they could. The chair of that committee could say, today we're only giving 1 minute. So it was good to know that could have been a potential, and that way I was prepared with an even shorter version of what I wanted to say. But the written testimony still had it all, so it would not have been a loss.
Great. Yeah, that's great. So so you're testified. I actually saw your testimony on Facebook, which very well done.
Thank you.
If anybody that's LinkedIn, or I think it was Facebook.
It's on my LinkedIn for sure.
For sure. Yeah. One of those. Man, it was concise and very well put. So you got some good advice. So here we are. What was the outcome of all this?
Delegate Lewis's bill did not progress, which we expected because we had this similar bill, HB 19, but HB 19 passed. Yay! So I am thrilled. I am thrilled.
That means that now the requirement is 90 hours instead of 100.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Fantastic.
And we're extended into 2030. So I'm just thrilled.
Oh, great.
I'm so thrilled.
That's great. So now I guess the goal is we want more nurse preceptors to apply for this credit. And you already mentioned a website. Can you say that again? Where can they apply?
Yes. So it's the Maryland Department of Health website, or you could simply Google Maryland Preceptor Tax Credit, and it will take you to where you need to be.
Perfect. Because like I want our listeners to know that like this is such an advantage. And we have talked at a state level so much about our need for preceptors, the shortage of preceptors that we have, and just shortage of nurses because we don't have enough educators. And so many people have recommended and asked, well, we just need more incentives. We need to pay them. We need to incentivize them in some way. And so to know that this is out there, I just want to spread the word. Like I want everyone to know that this is available and that they should take advantage of this credit. So I'm so grateful that you got this passed and that you were able to, now we can steer people toward that website. So I love this, Teresa, so much. I love not only what you did specifically with this bill, but you were an advocate for nursing and you had a passion, you had a vision, you had something that stirred in your heart that you knew needed to change. And you did something about it, which I think we want all nurses to have that level of voice and level of influence, not only here in the state of Maryland, but nationally, right?
Yes.
And so I want to ask you if I think our listeners are like, I'd love to do that. How in the world do I get involved? And the process is clearly intimidating. It's an intimidating process. There are legislators who are sitting there listening to your testimony. You've got 2 minutes, maybe one, right? And then there are also people opposing bills. So you could be, right, having a testimony for something or against something, and then you have someone who might have a testimony that opposes you. And that can be an intimidating process. So as someone who just went through this, and this was your first and only so far, right, experience. I got that right?
Yes, yeah. There'll be more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there should. And so what would you say to nurses or maybe other healthcare workers who might want to get involved in advocacy of their profession? And I speak to nurses because that's where we're here, right? But I think this absolutely would apply to other healthcare workers that feel intimidated by this process or want to do that. What would you say? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, no, I'm really glad you brought this up because, I recognize advocacy can feel intimidating, especially when you don't know where to start, which was kind of how I started. As nurses, we are the most trusted profession.
Yes.
So let's talk about our skills. We know how to build relationships. We know how to problem solve. We are critical thinkers.
Yep.
We have this great skill set. In working with the bedside, we really see those social determinants of health. We really know health policy, but we don't leverage it. And we really need to.
Yes.
And as nurses, we face a lot of challenges in the workplace, and we could resolve those through legislation.
Absolutely.
And so, maybe you're a listener out there and you're like, how do I get started? I don't know what to do. There's numerous ways that you can advocate for nursing and the healthcare profession.
Yeah.
So first, if you don't already know this, you should find out who your legislators are, locally, through the state, at the national level.
That's good.
Consider following them on social media.
Oh.
And I say that because many representatives will post about the work they're doing.
Yeah.
So that way you'll know, what bills have they introduced or are considering introducing.
That's great advice.
Thanks. Attend a town hall that they might be attending. They often will post that as well. And you can use that opportunity to get to know them. Introduce yourself, whether through email or in person.
That's great.
Start building those connections because not only that, you're going to grow your network. When you're attending these events, you're going to talk to other people that, may have similar interests. Right. That's how I got the coalition piece built.
Yeah.
Don't forget the staffers. The staff members are incredibly involved in the process.
Okay. And the legislative staff that work with your legislature. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So they could be a great asset for you, for sure. Another way that you could get involved is through nursing organizations.
Right.
So whether you're state level or national level, the organizations oftentimes have legislative committees. And so what they work to do, they work for advocacy efforts. They might be monitoring proposed bills or helping to really gather that organization together to go out and advocate.
Right.
And so, for example, the Maryland Nurses Association, they hosted their Nurses Night in Annapolis back in February.
That's right.
Which I attended. I took advantage of that one.
And they do that every year.
They do it every year,
yep.
and it's so worth, going to.
Right.
It was a great opportunity to speak to state legislators. They had some of them as speakers. I used that opportunity to distribute my healthcare preceptor tax credit fact sheet.
Perfect.
Every legislator I spoke with, and I was asking for support there.
Yeah.
But really, advocacy doesn't have to require a huge time commitment. So if you're thinking, I don't have a lot of time, if you have 5 minutes to send an email, you have time. You can do this. Or you have 18 months to dedicate to a DMP project.
Right.
But there is space for you. Your voice matters, and we truly welcome it. There are not enough nurses that are out there, advocating for the profession. And if we got together, we have almost 5 million nurses in this country. If we really got together, wow, what a difference we could make.
Absolutely. You said that so well. I could not have said that better myself. And, you put a plug in for the Maryland Nurses Association, but I'm going to put a plug in for the Maryland Organization of Nurse Leaders, which we are a special committee underneath MONAL. They also have a legislative subcommittee where, they do that this sort of advocating and legislative work. And part of that is joining the American Association or the American Organization of Nurse Leaders. They have an advocacy day and an advocacy academy that they do every year in DC. So you're absolutely, I think that's such great advice to get involved in an organization, because they really do facilitate helping nurses understand how to get involved in this process, because it behooves those organizations to have more nurses speaking into these issues. So I love it. This is so great, Teresa, and I want all of our listeners to just feel that stir in them to have a voice in legislation around some of these nursing issues. So I love this. I can't wait for people to hear this episode. But I want to give you an opportunity to, what final thoughts would you have for our listeners with your experience and, maybe associated with credit or whatever? Any final thoughts?
Sure. It has been an incredible journey. I am deeply grateful to all the stakeholders, for their time and support, because it really takes a village. I could not have done this at all on my own. And especially for Delegate Robin Lewis for being a champion for our profession.
Great.
You can't change the law without a legislator to submit something.
That's the truth.
I hope that my sharing my journey really inspires somebody out there to take a leap and become more involved in policy advocacy, because our voices really do matter. And we can really drive change that's needed. Yeah.
No, I love it. I love that. And thank you for that. I hope that is the case. I'm sure it will be. So a big thank you again to Dr. Teresa DeSeta for joining us today. And thank you to all of you for tuning into the MNRC Connection. You can learn more about the Maryland Nurse Residency Collaborative by visiting mdonl.nursingnetwork.com and clicking on the Maryland Nurse Residency Collaborative tab. Until next time, stay connected.